I like to have kind of the second and third segments being second one is kind of methodology, and we talked about this, and the third one being more of an applied project. But I get the feeling that we jump from one to the other, and
Hard to
and
keep
that
them
and
separate.
and that's not an issue. I think it was even my fault, leading you to talk about something more concrete. Is there something you want to maybe do maybe a deeper dive in terms of methodology, and then switch, maybe something we haven't covered? Because I think you also touch on text mining. Um,
Hmm.
is that right?
Yeah, text mining is fantastic. When you've got uh, when you
It's some
want,
it's somewhere in between, analyzing the data and having focus groups, right? You get kind of qualitative, but not quite, because you can't
mhm.
ask the questions, but it's more than only, the age and gender and that kind of stuff. I'm always fascinated by open-ended questions.
And for most of the text mining work I do, or my team does, it's typically open-ended items from a survey that we're looking at, and we do a lot of needs assessment work kind of in advance of strategic planning work. So, getting data across stakeholder groups, the old school way. Some of you watching might have recalled the old school highlighters and tally marks, and I do my work, and then my colleague does his or her work, and then we compare notes and see, are we close. And that can take forever depending on how much data you have available. But when you've got text mining software that has natural language processing, that has the sentiment analysis, now you can get your second reader. I still like to read the comments because I want to have a flavor of what is going on. I want to verify that the
It's
text
part of it.
mining is accurate. But
Yeah,
having
you
the
have
text
to do
mining
it.
say,
Yeah.
here's what we're seeing. It might have been something that I didn't pick up on. So we kind of, it's another set of eyes to help.
I get the best, and so yeah, I was about to say, I get the best ideas on how to model this by reading the comments. I usually get a good chuckle as well, by reading some of them, and also that's a good way to do quality assurance in the end. I mean, if you haven't read the comments, you have no clue what's going on. How can you be so sure about the outcome, and if you're the way you've categorized some of the data, and yeah. So, and what
Mhm.
kind of tool do you use in order to do that text mining?
I use Modeler for that as well. Modeler has the text mining feature embedded with it, so that's one that I've used over the years. And you can build the custom text analysis packages. So if it's something that's higher education focused, then the package is already set with categories for that. If it's more, I used to do professional development surveys. So what are the outcomes of a training program? And so you can use a package that you've created for that purpose if you have that
I would.
experience again.
I always thought that the text mining module out of Modeler was really good, really amazing. Even today, whenever I'm building some text mining solutions using open source like R or Python, I go back to the methodology of that we were using in Modeler. With the concepts, categories, the types,
Yeah.
the synonyms.
Hmm.
They're really well done. I mean, that they've done an amazing job, and a lot of R&D, and whoever uses that is obviously getting their value for their money. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know more and more I've seen solutions embedding kind of a text analysis component as a as a feature to software, but so much is still word count, word frequency, and not the context. So
Yep.
it's not providing, it's
The
telling me
semantic.
perhaps, right. So I'm finding out, okay, 80% of people said math, but what if 60% of them hated math? I want to know what they felt about it, not just that they mentioned it. So, I think
Sentiment
that's a
analysis.
piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Big
Yeah.
time. So you're more of a text mining using modeler than statistics, because statistics also has some
Um,
functionality about it, but
those
it's
are,
diluted, right? It's a fraction of what modeler has.
there was a standalone, but I think that sunset,
Oh,
and
okay.
the statistics. You could have, there's R and Python integration, so you could always, leverage packages that are out there. But I think having it within Modeler, you can categorize your results and then include that in a predictive model. So it's more seamless to say, all right, here's my predictive model for, let's go back to the retention example. And if I have a survey where I know sense of fit as a construct of that survey, now I can use the results of that text mining work to inform the predictive model. So now I have new fields that I can add in and build a better model. So I think that's important functionality to be able to not just look at it from an evaluative perspective, but use those results to derive, new predictions.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, Anything else you would want to add in terms of the project, something concrete about, you've mentioned something about the retention in school, um, and also some KPIs. I believe you also help them in identifying some of the KPIs. Can you maybe elaborate on some of the KPIs that education are looking for in order to improve?
And it's interesting. There are similarities K-12 and higher education, and even in higher education, there's some distinctions and similarities that change. So in in K-12 public school, it open enrollment, you're educating who walks through the door, and that's very similar to a community college in the U.S. where it's open enrollment. So the approach to understanding who walks in and how to best serve that student's academic goals. As early as we can predict that, the better. That's a little bit different than a more competitive or selective higher education institution that might want to look at applications and say, based on these applications, who's likely to stay on with the institution and persist just based on at the time of their application.
Because they
So
want to have serious students. I mean, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's also part of it.
And
It's
results will
it's
vary by program. So that's an important doing split models too, because students going into an engineering school versus a nursing school versus the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, there are going to be different factors that are going to predict persistence in each of those.
interesting.
So I mean that
Can you name maybe one factor that would differ from just by curiosity?
when you think about the nursing and the engineering programs, having math and science underpinnings. So, what are the math and science backgrounds of those students might be a more critical. I'm not going to say for sure because it depends on your institution and the model, but those indicators are more likely to be an important contributor to the model than, say, for a student in a College of Liberal Arts and Science.
Okay.
There might be other indicators that are more significant in those models. So I think we see some of that happen. I did work with nursing programs and predicting success on the NECLEX, which is the certification exam.
Okay.
So how do we know when a student is, in their first year of the nursing program? Are they likely to be successful, and where are they struggling, so that we can provide them the supports to say, they're going to have a better chance of passing that certification test. So, I mean, those are
As, a
just a
good- as
few.
the good old saying go,
Graduation rates. I mean, there's so many things.
yeah. It's what is it again? It's an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of medication, that kind of stuff, right? So
Mhm.
if you're capable of being ahead of the curve, it's
Yeah,
much easier to address the issue before it gets too big and too complicated.
absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with the way resources are now, and some institutions are struggling with enrollment, other institutions funding sources are drying up or changing, funding formulas. So being able to do this type of work is going to better allocate those limited resources into the future.
Nice. Have you ever done work in Canada?
Not enough. Love more opportunities, right? Not too far from the border.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're closer to Toronto than Montreal. Would that make sense? Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's pretty easy to get wherever
Oh
you
yeah,
need to
especially now, we can do work from home office and that kind of stuff.
go.
So, but yeah, I see a ton of opportunities in terms of improving on the outcome of those students. I mean, there's especially, yeah, in Quebec where we don't have the best stats. I mean, we've came a long way, but in terms of dropout rates,
Mhm.
we're, I believe, ranked number one, but in the negative way of
Mhm.
being ranked. So we're last of our cohorts of all the
Mhm.
provinces in Canada, unfortunately. So there's a lot that can be done. I've heard that they've started to do that, but it's not, I believe, spearheaded by the Ministry of Education. It's one school board doing it and
Mhm.
trying their best, but um, hopefully they can do a bit of more of that. And yeah, so if they're
Yeah,
listening, they should be
I've seen
getting in touch with you.
yeah, I've seen a lot of terrific change and for the betterment of students when it's driven at the local level. When things tend to be top down, that's where we can run the risk of things being too cookie cutter, one size fits all in the application. When it's more homegrown, then you've got the flexibility to say, all right, I do have survey data that I can bring in, or I do have, this other data set or database that I can pull in. So
Which is
there's more
custom to the
flexibility.
school or to the
Mhm.
school board, as opposed to having one methodology that
Right,
tries to include and encompass all the schools and the school board in the entire province or state.
right,
And you usually when you do this, you use data at its lowest denominator, right? So if half of the school board have it and the other one doesn't have it, then you go with, you
right.
you lower the standards by going with the data that everyone has, so you're kind of losing on 50% of those school boards.
Hmm.
And that makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay. Would
Yeah.
you actually, I was about to ask you if you had a last word, but one thing that we haven't talked about is your YouTube channel as well, for people
Oh,
being interested. I mean, you do fantastic stuff and you just got started, right? So and you want to improve. So do you want to talk about this
sure.
briefly? Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we started our YouTube channel at kind of the beginning of the year. And the first half of the year, we've been updating with kind of weekly tips and tricks for SPSS. So, how do you prepare your data or how do you do some of the transformations and, 1 to 2 minute segments of here's one task, one thing, how do you do it? So, that's the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, we'll be moving into some of our case studies. So we'll be engaging with some of our clients and getting their perspectives and hearing how analytics work. It made a difference in some of the decisions and some of the outcomes that they've experienced. And we've got education clients, but we also work with small businesses and work with business development and how do you do a market analysis and improve your business outcomes. So we'll have a mix of case studies to share. And that's
Interesting.
Alla Breve Educational Consulting. That's our
So
YouTube.
yeah, so this is what they have to type in YouTube in order to find the channel, Alla Breivik. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
hopefully it'll start popping up when you just start typing Alla Breve.
Oh
We're
yeah,
working on
hopefully.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Subscribe.
Always precisely. Yeah. Once
Yeah.
you've started to post the stuff on YouTube, you get to understand how the thing works. So the
Mhm.
more people subscribe, the better it is.
Right. Right.
Perfect. Nicole, I wanted to thank you for joining me on this recording. It was really awesome, great conversation. I really appreciate it, and thanks again.
Appreciate it. I could talk about it all day. So, I'm glad that you had a time limit and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and the audience about the exciting world of data science and analytics.
Indeed, perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.